How can autistic people overcome brain freeze? Stick around to find out. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Woodshed Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button. Ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos 3 times a week. Click the like, click the like. I am trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you could help me out, I would really appreciate it. I was recently filming a collab with my friend Orion Kelly. You may know him. Check out his videos. Our collab will be out soon. Obviously, the collab was us speaking via a video chat because he's in Australia and I'm in America. But one of the things that we kind of laughed about and noticed was just our, we'll call it autistic brain freeze. If you're on the spectrum, having a conversation with someone can be really difficult, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. Mostly it comes down to the fact that our brains are wired differently than neurotypicals, and there are just parts of being in a conversation that we naturally struggle with. So today I wanted to talk about this idea of autistic brain freeze. What do you do when you're in the middle of a conversation and you freeze? What steps can you take to help that doesn't happen? Hopefully things can improve for you. I know that I am a work in progress myself, but I have a few tips I thought might be helpful. My first tip is to take notes while you're speaking to someone. This is not always the easiest thing to do if you're in different situations, like maybe out to dinner or even having coffee with someone. But I really prefer to have a notebook and a pen with me while I'm on the phone or having any important conversations or meetings, because it's really important to me to be able to write my thoughts down as I go, and it helps me focus and follow along with the conversation where otherwise I might lose focus. Also, if I have a point that I'd like to make, I sometimes can stop listening to the person who's speaking because I'm waiting to make my point. Then the conversation moves forward and I am no longer paying attention to it, and by the time I get to speak, I have to go back to the point that I wanted to talk about. It can be a whole mess. So taking notes is a really helpful step for me. The second thing I wanted to talk about is sensory issues. One of the reasons that you can get brain freeze or not know where you are in a conversation or not know what to say next is because of sensory issues. A big one for me is eye contact. And if you're on the spectrum, you probably know what I'm talking about. And that is, eye contact is difficult for us. It feels super intimate, and I just get distracted as soon as I have to look somebody in the eyes. So my solution to this is, if I'm really trying to think about something in a conversation, I will look away. And I try to be as polite as possible about it and just let the person know, is it okay if I look away while I'm thinking? Not everyone is going to understand this, but you know, you don't need so much negative energy in your life. So if somebody has a real problem with it, it's not your fault. I remember as a child, my father always saying, like, look me in the eyes, look at me, look at me. But now as an adult, I realize that sometimes that's just too much, and it might appear to a person that I'm not listening, but it actually really helps me to follow along with the conversation and helps me to formulate what I'm going to say next and be better at where I'm saying things in the conversation. Third thing I thought would be helpful is stimming to focus. Now, a lot of us need to stim to focus, and I've made a video on stimming before where I talk about how, I feel like my stimming maybe doesn't look like a traditional autism stim as far as what people would do. I mean, I do rock while I crochet, etc. But I'm just not really into like poppets or slime or things like that. What I will do is cut paper when I'm on the phone with someone or talking to them. I will play with fabric I have left over from my projects. I will crochet. I will just keep my hands moving so that I can focus on what is being said to me. Just make sure you're not doing like a complicated knitting pattern or something where you have to count. Something that you could do that is a stim that's kind of mindless, you're just keeping your body going, that'll really help. The fourth thing I was thinking about is to limit the number of people you're talking to at once, and if you can, try to do a one-on-one conversation. This isn't always a possibility, but it is difficult for us as autistic people to follow several lines of communication at once. You may have noticed when you're in a big group of people and they're all talking, sometimes you might shut down because you don't really know where you fit into the conversation. Or if you're in a big group of people, you might start soliloquizing. How do you say that? You might give a soliloquy. You might talk for too much, talk for too long, and not give everyone a fair chance to give their thoughts. And that's what a conversation is. So that's not the goal. The goal is to have a conversation. So I would practice one-on-one with a friend at first, or a relative, or whoever you want to talk to, but that can be really helpful if you are worried about response time or freezing up, etc. Fifth tip is put it in writing. Switch to writing. Changing the mode of communication can be really helpful if you're on the autism spectrum. And I know that my friend Taylor over at Mom on the Spectrum, sometimes she talks to me via Marco Polo because that's easier for her as far as just doing things through a video app. I love to text. I don't mind an email. I just would rather be putting my thoughts in writing for several reasons. First, there is a longer amount of socially acceptable time where you have time to formulate your response. Whereas when you're talking to somebody one-on-one, they expect an answer right away. And that's really difficult for somebody who's on the autism spectrum. So if you can change your mode of communication, it's not always going to be possible, but if you can, I find that putting it in writing really helps me suss out what I want to say, and it helps me actually think a little bit faster on my feet. Number 6, be honest. When you talk to anyone, I mean, they could be neurotypical or on the spectrum, I suppose, sometimes they're going to get frustrated if you can't answer quickly enough. And listen, I've been frustrated before about stuff like this. So, I don't think it's abnormal to be frustrated when you're waiting on an answer. But we have to remember that as people on the spectrum, we may have issues with processing time and processing speed, and that is going to hinder our response time in conversations. So being open and honest with the person that you're talking to can really help. Now, you might not want to say I'm on the spectrum, depending on the situation. You might not feel comfortable saying, oh, I am on the autism spectrum, can you repeat that? But you can also give other reasons that explain the situation. Like, I have an auditory processing disorder, could you repeat that? Or just, hey, can you repeat what you were saying? Or can I just have a minute to think about that? Something to tell the person that you're not going to respond in the next 5 seconds, so they're not thinking that, you've shut them off or whatever. Describe what you're currently doing to them at that moment. So if you are currently thinking through a response, just let them know, hey, I'm thinking through a response. That can be difficult, but if you train yourself to do it or already have it in your mind that you're going to do it, then you'll probably remember to do it. So it's just something to keep in mind when you feel like you've frozen in a conversation, you don't know where you are in the conversation, you don't know what you're going to say. It's polite, I feel, to say, give me a moment to think about that, or can you repeat that, or I'd have to consider a few things on that, or can I ask a clarifying question? And that way you give yourself more time to formulate a response. My 7th and final tip is to give yourself grace. So often as people on the spectrum, we are just suffocated by ableism and this idea of what we should be able to handle or what our lives should look like. But we need to step back and reevaluate what a good and healthy and happy life looks like for us. And a really important part of that is giving yourself grace. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and that's completely fine. The people who matter will understand, and the people who don't understand, maybe they don't need to be around you, and you don't need that kind of stress in your life. But if you've got people who love you and good people around you, they'll know to give you an extra few seconds to respond, or they'll understand your idiosyncrasies when it comes to trying to do neurotypical conversation. Those were 7 tips of how I would suggest combating brain freeze during conversations when you're on the autism spectrum. I'm sure there are many, many more, and we would love for you to share them in the comments because our community is very active here and we enjoy hearing everyone's feedback. Have you ever experienced anything like this before? Do you know what it's like to freeze in the middle of a conversation and not know where you were or what you were thinking about or what you were going to say? And what do you do when you get into that situation? I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!